Recording in progress.
Honorable members, good morning. Good morning, everyone. It is our time now. I think we must start our meeting. As planned, I'm trying to check who else is with us here. So, greetings to the department and the teams that are going to present today. We have Michelle, and we have Mr. Kovela and DG leading the department. Thank you very much for coming. You are all welcome to this meeting, honorable members, and everyone else that I may not have mentioned. I will then request that we have the agenda. So our agenda looks like this. We have 2 items on the agenda. However, before we go to the items and the presentations, I guess they're going to be very short presentations, and we'll take those discussions and ask questions where necessary or for clarification and all that. So let me declare this meeting open and request Albertina, if you can come forward and give us any indication of apologies before we continue with the meeting, and also indicate if we do indeed form a quorum, even if we do have apologies. Albertina?
Good morning, and thank you, Chair. Good morning, Chair, and members, our guests, the department, and also my colleagues. Chair, we've got an apology from our Minister. Minister Steenhuisen is due to G20 commitments, and then Deputy Minister Tapa due to prior ministerial commitments, and MP Madlala and MP Tama, they are on the oversight visit with the Land and Rural Development Portfolio Committee. And as well as Utatu Tsabekulu is on the platform, Chair, but he wanted to be excused at 11:15 to attend to the PC on Kokta. On the platform, Chair, I think the committee do have a quorum. We have Utatu Tsabekulu, who MP Nkabane, MP Aris, MP Smith, MP Ndalane, MP Davis, and MP Trollip. I'm not sure whether I miss some of the members on the platform. Thank you, Chair.
Mokgohloa is present.
I didn't hear that.
I'm saying Zwelakhe Mthethwa is present.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Honorable Mthethwa. So we are fine. We can then start our meeting. Let me once more welcome our guests here and check if Michelle, you are ready. We are going to take the presentation, colleagues, or the briefing by Stop Live Export South Africa on live animal export. And the presenter is the co-founder and EXCO member of this organization. May I hand over to you to brief the honorable members, ma'am.
Good morning, Honourable Chair. Good morning, honourable members of the Portfolio Committee on Agriculture. And good morning to everybody who is watching on the live stream platform. Albertina, if you wouldn't mind to enable me as co-host so that I may share my presentation.
Yeah,
Yes,
please
yes,
do
Michelle,
so.
Yes, you are a co-host, Michelle. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Just to confirm if everybody can see the slides.
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much, Chair. Once again, good morning to the Honourable Chair and honourable members. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you today on this very important subject of live animal exports by sea. I'm joined today by Tony Gerrits from the Humane World for Animals, who will be co-presenting with me, as well as colleagues Candice Blom and Karen Saunders.
Okay, that's fine.
So just to start off with, just to introduce our organizations to you, Stop Live Exports, or SLESA for short, is a national movement formed by ordinary South Africans who refuse to accept the cruelty involved in exporting live animals by sea. Our supporters come from all walks of life. These are people who have stood outside in the sun, on city streets, and at public marches because they care deeply about animal welfare. We do not work in isolation. Our work is strengthened by our partnerships with veterinarians, animal welfare experts, legal specialists, and international organizations who have decades of experience with this issue. We are also members of the South African Farmed Animal Alliance, as well as the Cape Animal Welfare Forum, which together constitute over 70 animal protection organizations nationwide. Our campaigns are not purely based on emotion. They are backed by evidence, expertise, and a scientific understanding of the suffering that animals endure at sea. Our petitions and campaigns have gathered support from thousands of South Africans, and we are not here today as a fringe interest group. We are here as representatives of the public of South Africa. Our message is simple. We must protect animals from cruelty, and putting an end to the transport of live animals by sea is essential in doing so. So by way of introduction, just a brief explanation of the live export trade from South Africa. South Africa exports live animals, mainly sheep to Mauritius, sheep to the Middle East, and cattle are shipped to Mauritius. These journeys expose animals to extreme hardships. For example, the voyage to the Middle East takes about 3 weeks. If you compare this to the 18-hour legal limit for road transport within South Africa, you can already see the contradiction. Historically, this industry has been small, largely due to the NSPCA's intervention, as well as disease outbreaks such as the rampant foot and mouth disease at the moment, which has limited movement. But today, government's plans show an intention to significantly increase the live export trade. This expansion comes despite the evidence that we cannot safeguard animal welfare at sea. And this carries serious risks for South Africa's reputation, its biosecurity, and its trade relationships. I shall now hand over to my colleague, Tony, who will cover the next section.
Thank you, Michelle, and good morning to the Honourable Chair and the entire committee. Thank you for having us today. The problem with the regulation of welfare for farmed animals shipped at sea is in essence that it doesn't work. There are inherent harms in confining large numbers of animals onto a moving vessel for long periods of time. And these inherent harms are unavoidable and cannot be fully mitigated by having regulatory regimes. We see a lot of experience that other countries with far larger live export industries than South Africa is contemplating have struggled over decades to get live export working properly at sea and the regulation of it to protect the animals. So we see, for example, the Australian experience with their regulatory frameworks, SCAS and ACEL, which were far more sophisticated than the regulations that are being proposed for South Africa. And eventually Australia had to come back to the conclusion which their Select Committee on Animal Welfare reached in 1985 already, that animal welfare simply cannot be assured on these ships or at the point of destination through regulation. And the reason for that is that the circumstances aboard the vessel are inherently problematic. As Michelle said, these animals can be confined on the vessel for up to 3 weeks and sometimes longer if there are unexpected difficulties either with the ship or with the berthing or with the weather. Whilst the animals are at sea, they suffer a range of accumulated stresses coming from the confinement, the heat, noise, motion, diet, waste. The animals live in their own excrement for most of the journey. They do suffer injury, and it is almost impossible to provide veterinary care to all of these animals. On some voyages, there are up to 70,000 animals on a single vessel. We also express concern about whether there are adequate welfare conditions in place in some of the destination countries who import large numbers of animals. And investigations by animal welfare organizations in other countries who have done supply chain tracing have indicated very problematic circumstances for animals, often at the point of destination. Standards of treatment or mistreatment that we would never accept in our own country are commonplace. Many of the vessels that are used in this trade are old converted ships. There are some purpose-built ships, but many of them have been converted from vehicle transport vessels. And as a category of shipping, this category of the global merchant marine fleet is the oldest and has the highest number of incidents. Some of the inherent problems that you can imagine is if a vessel is stranded or has some mechanical problem or has a fire, what can you do with the animals on board? You can do absolutely nothing. They are entirely compromised. And this is part of the difficulty with the trade, that once the animals are committed to the ship, there is no real rescue for them from either the actual forecastable conditions on the ship or when there is any exceptional circumstance. So we do have a short video which we'd like to show you by Dr. Lynn Simpson, an Australian veterinarian who traveled on many of these voyages between Australia and the Middle East on ships that are typical of the vessels that come to South Africa. Thanks, Michelle.
Are you done, Tony? I see that you are muted now.
No, Chair, we would like to show you the short video, and then I have a little bit more to do before we go back to Michelle and we finish.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to be playing a short video now. When I start to play, I'm hoping that the video is audible.
To the honourable members of the Portfolio for Agriculture at the Parliament of South Africa, thank you for hearing me today. My name is Dr. Lynn Simpson. I'm an Australian veterinarian with extensive experience in the live export chain. After graduating vet school, I went to sea as a shipboard vet, eventually accompanying 57 long-haul voyages to or through the Middle East, as well as to Russia, Turkey, Libya and Madagascar. Inherent shipping risks are numerous and often quite unique to the live export trade. These issues include, but are not limited to, mechanical breakdowns like loss of propulsion and steering. I've worked on multiple stationary ships in the middle of the ocean as repairs on the main engine are undertaken. I've had a voyage where the rudder fell off. I've had 2 other voyages where blades from the propellers have fallen off. An untold number of experienced blackouts and power failures that cut off fresh air supply to the livestock, risking the death of livestock within minutes. I've watched engineers struggle to fix desalination freshwater machines mid-ocean whilst animals sweltered in their pens. I've expected our ship to capsize, fully loaded with animals during days on end of rough seas, having our ship roll beyond 35 degrees, only to be thrown upright again by waves. I've sailed through rough weather with cyclones, where the captain insists that the crew stay inside for days in a row due to the risk of being injured and washed overboard. Meanwhile, the animals go without feed, water, observation and medical care. I've had at least 2 engine fires and numerous galley fires. People fail to understand the risk of fire at sea. When they get out of control, there is no protocol to protect the animals. The animals simply die horribly. Sheep ships especially have the unique and dangerous risk of weight migration or stability migration. No other ships have this problem. Ships leave their loading port with full fodder and full fuel tanks sitting low in their hull, helping to stabilise the vessel. As the voyage progresses, the fuel and fodder are consumed. Fodder weight is transferred higher up in the ship in the forms of increased body weight, gut fill, and built up manure on the decks, making the ship top heavy. This often reduces stability and makes the ship more prone to rolling and or capsize, a likely contributor to the sinking of vessels such as the Gulf Livestock One from New Zealand recently. Any voyage delay or extension of duration increases the risk of fodder shortages. There is nowhere at sea to stop for provisions, resulting in more suffering and deaths. In my experience, sheep are the most vulnerable animals we export by sea. The environment is tough on them and there is no reprieve from the 24/7 noise, light and high stocking densities. Diseases such as shy feeding, pink eye and pneumonia are very common on these ships and often severe or fatal. Sheep suffer terribly in hot humidity. Humidity quickly causes heat stress, hence the reasons we do not see them farmed in the tropics, places where most cattle and goats thrive. Unlike cattle, we cannot hose sheep or loaded sheep decks without causing mass deaths from the rapid exacerbation of humidity caused. Heat stress deaths of sheep are abhorrent and can only be avoided by not sending them into such a dangerous environment, especially if crossing the equator or going to the Middle East in summers. Loaded livestock decks warm up quickly with the body heat of animals on board. Few realise that many of the sheep decks are actually under the waterline. The warm waters of the Middle East, especially during the Northern Hemisphere's summer, make it like sailing into a large metal hot water bath, like those used for keeping fast food warm. Recent years are reported as having the highest sea surface temperature since records were begun. The two most critical waypoints for sheep to the Middle East are always the hottest on the globe. It highlights that to get to any of the destination ports, sheep have to traverse the Straits of Hormuz or Bab el-Mandeb. Both are notorious points for heat stress events and deaths. More dead sheep lie on the seafloors there than anywhere else I can imagine. While cattle cope with the management around humidity better than sheep do, they still struggle with heat stress, as well as commonly show high incidence of severe and/or fatal pneumonia, pink eye and leg injuries. Issues that could be mild on land are exacerbated on a ship by the crowding and humidity. The other very serious issue that cattle experience is lameness and leg injuries. Injuries caused by the very infrastructure that they are held on and within. The floors abrade hooves and joints as they rub constantly with the movement of the ships on the water, and the railings cause injuries as animals are jostled into them repeatedly during rough weather. Lesser known issues are the unexpected births of lambs and calves at sea if pregnancy testing has been missed. These newborns are often trampled to death soon after birth, and of course leave the mother with the risk of retained placentas and mastitis due to no suckling neonate. It is my strong opinion that there is no way this trade can be fixed or managed to provide an acceptable risk to the animals involved and be financially viable. Mass numbers of animals cannot be safely and reliably exported long distance by sea without experiencing unnecessary suffering. This trade is in its global twilight, and with poor animal welfare, food safety and therefore public health risks in importing countries being a very real concern from the consumption of meat from these compromised animals. Please do not hesitate to contact me for any further information or clarification on these issues. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Doctor. I missed your name when you were introducing yourself. If I may get it, please.
Thank you, Chair. So my name is Tony Gerrans.
No, Tony, I need the name of the doctor who was presenting.
That was Dr. Lynn Simpson.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. She sailed on 56 vessels, journeys from Australia to many of the destinations we send our animals to from South Africa as well. So I realized that is not easy viewing, but there we had it from someone with a large history of experience in this trade. And what we see now emerging is that countries that have formerly had vibrant and growing live industries are now moving away from the trade in recognition of the problems that Dr. Simpson had illustrated in that video. Most recently, we see Australia, who had a much larger sheep export trade out of West Africa than South Africa is out of West Australia than South Africa is contemplating, have now passed a ban that says at the end of 2028 they will have a prohibition on live sheep exports, and that comes after nearly 2 million sheep have died at sea over the years in this trade. We see New Zealand also banning live exports for slaughter, and we see a similar ban in the UK, and other countries are moving towards this with progress in Germany and Brazil, and now also, hopefully, we'd like to think in South Africa. Thanks, Michelle. So the responsibility for animal welfare and the administration of the Animals Protection Act and the Performing Animals Protection Act vests with the Minister of Agriculture. This is per a presidential decree from 1997. Previously, the responsibility for administering the anti-cruelty legislation in South Africa vested in the Department of Justice. Section 2 of the Animals Protection Act sets out a long list of offenses that would arise from the mistreatment of animals, including many of the circumstances that we see on these voyages. So confining animals in ways that causes suffering due to overloading is prohibited by the Animals Protection Act. So is keeping animals in dirty and parasitic conditions, and so is exposing animals to excessive heat or noxious fumes. The Animals Protection Act does have some qualifiers about necessary suffering, but it's hard to imagine what type of necessity one would be able to argue would justify the type of mistreatment that we saw in that video. So the Minister of Agriculture has recently produced a set of draft regulations to govern the welfare of animals at sea in this trade. In doing so, he relied on Section 10 of the Animals Protection Act, which gives him authority to pass regulations that fulfill the purpose of the legislation. We would argue that the regulations are not fit for purpose in that they do not provide sufficient mechanisms to protect animals from the type of harms that we've seen, and therefore do not fulfill the minister's responsibility to enforce the Animals Protection Act in the broader interest of the South African public. Thanks, Michelle. Obviously, weighed up against the question of animal suffering is the question of what economic gain this brings us in South Africa. Clearly, there are some parties who will profit from the expansion of the export trade. However, we would like the committee to engage with our argument that says that economic development and the promotion of economic benefit cannot come at the expense of animal cruelty. We already have in the Animals Protection Act and in various court judgments, including jurisprudence from the Constitutional Court, a recognition that the suffering of animals is inconsistent with the values of our Constitution, and that it must be mitigated by the application of animal anti-cruelty laws. Given that there has already been live export from South Africa, we question what is the actual economic benefit of this trade. We know certainly that some exporters will earn revenue from this trade, but other exporters will also suffer negative effects. The live export from sheep from the Eastern Cape was reported to have affected the pricing of sheep products, mainly mutton and lamb. In the short term, the price went up, which may be to everyone's benefit, but when the ship didn't come the next year, the pricing went down again, and people who had become dependent on that additional revenue were left stranded. So what we would like to see is a discussion about whether there is in fact any net economic benefit. In other words, we don't just pay attention to the revenue side, we have a look at the entire implications for South Africa. We haven't yet seen any empirical evidence of such net economic benefit, either in questions and answers in the parliamentary process or in the single study that was produced on this matter by the University of the Free State, which was inconclusive in determining whether there was net economic benefit. Furthermore, much of this trade seeks to benefit larger exporters and not necessarily the smaller farmers or rural communities where economic development is so critical. We also know that by exporting animals alive and not processing them in South Africa, we lose all the jobs that would otherwise be associated with this value chain in South Africa. In other words, the slaughter and processing of the animals is all done offshore, and instead of growing our industry through foreign direct investment in South Africa, we are in fact offshoring those benefits to another country. As you heard from Dr. Simpson, there are significant biosecurity risks when you transport animals this way. Although animals are kept in a quarantine feedlot before loading, the sheer numbers of the animals involved makes it very difficult to correctly identify animals that may be diseased or may be pregnant. We're concerned that in this rush to promote this trade in South Africa, that these deeper questions of economic benefit, animal cruelty, and the overall questions of biosecurity risk, as well as the reputation of South Africa in the global stage, have not been fully considered. We'd like to just show you a second short video from a small-scale farmer, Mr. Nkwashu, who explains his views on live export to the committee. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mawewe Nkwashu, a member of a small-scale farm organization called Mopan Farmers Association. I am making this video just to raise my concern on behalf of the association smallholder farmers regarding the exportation of livestock. Red meat production in South Africa, it's at higher demand, hence the higher prices of red meat, and which is also affecting us as small-scale farmers and the poor people of this country. The high prices of red meat tells us that the market, the red meat market is saturated by demand, and if a lot of livestock then is being taken away, it means then that this is going to be a disaster for us as small-scale farmers and the poor people of this country. Secondly, exporting livestock for us is like we are taking business opportunities for small-scale farmers on livestock. We are exporting job opportunities for those people that are in need. We are actually causing a lot of competition between big livestock producers and us as small stock producers, which is going to make it difficult for us to exist. We cannot continue to exist. The other thing is that the way these livestock are being exported, for us it's like a serious violation of the rights of this livestock to be treated in a mannerly kind of a way. And we are saying that this is also gross negligence in terms of how we should take care of our livestock. It's also a very serious cruelty against animals. I strongly oppose the way livestock are being exported. I strongly oppose the exportation of a commodity that is already scarce in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Honourable Chair and members, moving on to public opposition. The message from the South African public on this matter could not be clearer. During the August 2025 public participation process with the draft live export regulations released by the Minister, more than 17,000 submissions were made through the Dear South Africa platform. And of that 17,000 submissions made by South Africans, 95% of those respondents called for a full ban on live animal exports. The reason why this number is so significant is because these platforms are completely independent of our organization or any other animal welfare organizations. These campaigns were run independently and were submitted by South Africans from all walks of life. In addition to this, Stop Live Exports South Africa has independently collected an additional 2,500 signatures from South Africans calling for a complete ban on live animal exports. So these numbers clearly show an overwhelming opposition from everyday South Africans to this trade. People do not want animals subjected to unnecessary suffering. They do not believe that live export is aligned with our national values. Parliament's role is to reflect the will and ethics of the people. And we say, Chair, on this issue, the public sentiment is unified and unmistakable. So to conclude today, Honourable Chair, our request to this committee, and the reason we are here today, is straightforward and we believe reasonable. We are asking this Portfolio Committee on Agriculture to utilise their oversight powers of the Agricultural Ministry to urge the Minister to withdraw the current draft live export regulations released in July 2025. They do not protect animals and they do not align with the Animals Protection Act. We then ask for the development of new regulations that explicitly prohibit live exports by sea in accordance with both South African law and international best practice. This really is an opportunity for South Africa to show leadership and to uphold its legal obligations and protect animals from suffering that cannot be regulated away. Honourable Chair, in closing, the evidence is consistent and overwhelming, as we've heard from both Dr. Lynn Simpson, the Australian vet, and my colleague Tony. The evidence is consistently pointing to the fact that live animal export by sea is inherently cruel. It doesn't bring broad economic benefits. South Africans are overwhelmingly rejecting this trade. Ending this trade would allow South Africa to demonstrate its position as an ethical trading partner and to take a leading position on the continent, prioritizing ethical, humane, and sustainable agriculture. Our nation prides itself on compassion and justice. If we are a compassionate nation that protects its most vulnerable, then we must include animals who are recognized as sentient beings by South Africa's Constitutional Court. Many of these animals rely entirely on us for their well-being. Thank you very much for your time today, honourable members. Honourable Chair, we now welcome any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Michelle. We do appreciate your presentation. And the question I was going to ask at the end, you have just answered it by the last slide of your presentation, which talks to the requests that you have to the members of the Portfolio Committee. Honourable members, there is a presentation. Is there anyone who would like to ask Michelle and the team with 20 questions? I have Honourable Mthethwa.
Member Aris, please, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So I have Honourable Mthethwa. Member Aris. Member Bayers, Smith. Member Davids. So you'll follow each other like that. Member Trollip. Okay, let's start with Mthethwa.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and greetings to the honorable members and greetings to our presenters and everyone who is joined us in this platform. This is an interesting subject, and the more Doctor is presenting many other affected areas that touches this subject that emerging. I will actually say that as you are proposing that we must ban live export, indirectly, I'm imagining a ripple effect, one on a decline of our export market opportunity. On the receiving end of those who should be receiving our export of live animals, there will be a shortage of supply of animals for the end user purpose which they had bought those animals for, which we need to investigate what were they for. I'm also seeing a competition between parties like yourself. This campaign is protecting animals. Yet, on the other hand, I'm imagining another campaign emerging, people who says we are for the interest of the people to get food. Because if the end user are people who need food, then the question is, how do we integrate these two parties so that you don't jeopardize human consumption of meat as a result of you banning because you're protecting animals. But yes, you are right. It's an economic issue more than just the issue of protecting animals. Because I was going to say to you, the world is technologically advanced. Have you proposed intervention technologically so that you say, in the current manner where you saw and witnessed the abuse of animals during the transition period from the origin to the ending point, we are proposing the following measures to be kept in place. We are proposing inspections. There should be supervision and surveillance of how these animals are moved until they reach their destination, so that when those are proposed and people must adhere to, then we should be saying people have broken the rules of engagement or rules of protection to animals, rather than banning an industry which has two purposes which may be distinct from each other. But I'm also interested to know, whom are you addressing who are doing this practice? Because I'm imagining that it is also an interest group that you are directing this to, which we also need to hear their side, because in law, as we are proposing that we must play oversight, we also want to play oversight to say who are the recipients, who are the benefiters, who in this trade, which we are now suggesting that we must ban, because we must hear their side. In law, we say audi alteram partem, hear the other side of the story as well. Once we hear the other side of the story, we then balance the stories and say, should we then listen to you to ban the live export, or we should be coming up with interventions that will address your concerns? Because when I listen to you, there are multiple undertones. One, you are talking about food shortage. Two, there is a demand of the same thing that is being exported. Three, there is an abuse of animals. So there are many reasons than just one reason. Rather, my proposal is that why don't we sit down, expose the entire value chain industry of agriculture, especially so that we look at the cause and effect and the ripple effect, action, reaction, because I also know, in the same vein that you are raising these matters, the same emerging farmers that you are engaging in this debate, they are also having their own issues that are affecting them in the same space of the animal production and growing their market. So there are also other concerns that they are not being addressed by the industry of agriculture to their own partners or competitors or fellow players in the industry, especially emerging farmers versus commercial farmers. So this is a big war of two elephants, but there are also those who get affected in the end. So let us rather open the scope and the entire value chain that is involved. The same way that the benefit, if we are not exporting live animals, can we see the beneficiation of those industries? But it is also the same international community as you are citing Britain, New Zealand, Australia. I had a lecture in a university telling economic students that let us make sure that Africa does not industrialize. Why? Because the first world countries are dependent on Africa for raw materials. So this suggestion is actually playing into exactly the same space where there are other interests that want to see Africa not adding value, but there are also other counter arguments that are saying, let us localize the economy. Others are saying, let's export to gain foreign currency. So there are a lot of competing factors which must be ventilated through a joint platform. So let us not just take a decision based on your singular presentation, but let's rather open the scope. Who are the stakeholders that are affected? And so that we open the scope and go to the public and say, let's hear what are the other issues that we are not hearing, because what you are very loud in addressing, there is another side which is not very loud. And so we must balance the equation, look at economics, look at animal welfare, look at the legalities, and look at the loopholes, look at the technology, look at the international community relations, because there is a fact that there are countries that are dependent. When you cite Middle East is a desert. So a lot of animals may not be able to survive there. A lot of food cannot grow in those areas. They need protein. All of those things should be looked into. So the intention of exporting was a good intention, I assume, but we must make sure that in doing good to animals, can we do the same also to human beings? Because we have seen this trade when there was a slave trade. It was easy to move human beings using the same ship across the Atlantic Ocean. But we never saw a campaign that actually defended the human beings to be exported abroad to be slaves. Here we are today, we are seeing a campaign of protection of animals, but we are not hearing protection of human beings. And in the same vein, it is human beings who need these animals for their human consumption to sustain a life. But that campaign is not actually sound. Why? Because it depends who is supporting and who is sponsoring. Sometimes when there is an opposition to certain practices like the export of live animals, it's because there is an industry that is waiting to benefit. When you ban this industry, there's going to be a benefit for them by thwarting the prospect of those who will be losing in the process. Because definitely, once you stop export, then it means the vessels, the shipping industry is going to also come to a decline, which is not necessarily the intention, but we must, whenever we are replacing or you are saying we must stop doing something, give us also to say what should we substitute that with, so that we don't just head saying we have stopped and banned, but we actually say we promote the shipment of animals, but in this manner. We have technology to prevent all the ills that you are fighting, but continue with the industry. By so doing, you are not going to have a spillover effect where you suppress an industry which had its own beneficiaries, and now you are creating another industry which has done in another industry. So it's a competitive engagement, and I will be interested that we listen to it on all sides and all angles. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Mthethwa. Before you come in, Honorable Aris, I see that Tony has raised his hand. Tony, just to indicate that we will allow the members to ask questions and make comments. Once they are done, we will revert back to yourself. So you don't have to worry by raising your hand. You'll be given an opportunity as part of the presenters to respond also to the issues that members are raising. Member Aris?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairperson. Good morning, and thanks for the presentation. Chairperson, I fully agree with the previous speaker. I think what is important for us is that we need to do our own study on these exports of livestock. I just have a few questions for them, and I want to find out how does the export of live animals impact the local food security if they did do that survey, and the availability of affordable meat products in the country. And then also I want to find out what economic benefits does the export of livestock bring to the emerging farmers, and how are they included in these export opportunities? Because, and that's why I'm saying the department must go and do for us a research on this thing of the livestock, because we don't have statistics, we don't have, like the previous speaker was saying, what is the economic impact on this livestock export. And then my last question is, how has there been an assessment on whether the country should shift to exporting processed meat products instead of live animals to promote local value addition? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member Davids.
Thank you, Chair, for this opportunity. I also want to welcome the presentation. Chair, my first question is, did they do a survey on the input that they made in the presentation of job losses? And then is there any totals that they can give and where the job losses was? And then did they ever do a same presentation to the Parliament of Australia, or is it only the that vegetarian that is doing that presentation to South Africa? And then my last question, Chair, is what do they think is the solution on the export of livestock? Because we cannot just stop a market because of one organization's input, Chair. So I want to know, did they ever, what is their solution to the export market of livestock in South Africa? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Smith.
Thank you very much, Chair. I appreciate, and thank you for the presentation. Chair, I've been partially covered on the question of the alternative, because that is important. Chairperson, I don't understand nicely the argument around the scarcity of animals. There was mentioned as well on the video that was showed of a small-scale farmer as well as the presenter, that because of the export of live animals, the price of beef, for example, goes up. In economics that I understand from studying also in the line of economics, is that it's all about demand and supply, and if the price goes up, it actually increases the value of your crop. So that means a higher profit margin. So maybe I don't understand the argument nicely, because what I got from that is that it actually creates a space for more production, that it creates more opportunity if because of export the demand is higher. So maybe I can just be clarified on that argument, because I don't see the negative impact on that specifically. I understand the impact in terms of the job opportunities and the market opportunity in terms of processing these products before exporting it. The other matter that I think also needs to be looked into is in terms of, because there's obviously a market for these live animals. Otherwise, it would be also exported as processed. is there any religious or cultural reason why these animals are exported live? In terms of if I think about the Middle East, in terms of Islam, their practices and so forth. So maybe I can just get some clarity on that aspect as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Smith, Honorable Trolip, or Honorable Davids. Honorable David, have you spoken, Honorable Davids? Yes, Honorable Trolip.
I've spoken, Chair.
Yes, Honorable Trolip.
Give your ID number.
No, please mute, Honorable Davids. Please mute. Honorable Trolip, are you on the platform? We seem to have lost. Oh, there you are. Honorable Trolip, it's your turn. Please unmute.
Hello. Sorry, Chair, I lost connectivity. Can I go ahead with
your background?
Oh, sorry. I beg your pardon.
No problem.
Sorry, I don't know what happened there. Chair, I just wanted to ask a question. In the presentation, there was said that in Australia they took a decision in 2018 or 2019 that there was a problem with the exportation of live animals, and that they have now set a deadline for the prohibition of export of live animals being the end of 2028. Why was there a 10-year gap between a conclusion that was reached about live exports to the final prohibition of 10 years? And if there is a call for prohibition in this country, what kind of time frame would you expect to be given to people who do export live animals? Because one of the other colleagues had said that there should be the opportunity to hear the other side. But if there was a long period between making a decision and finally enacting that decision, what are the planned proposals around that in South Africa? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Trolley. I don't see any other hand, so we will go back to Michelle and Tony to respond. And please let me help you to be focused so that you only respond to the issues that were raised that are relevant to the presentation that we've made. If anything else, leave it to the committee. Michelle, are you ready?
Yes, we are ready, Chair.
Please do.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm going to take a first pass at it, if it's okay. Lots of good engagement with the issue. So thank you to the members for considering all these different things. To speak to Honourable Mtetwa's original comments, and this will in part answer some of the questions from all the other honourable members. There is in fact an alternative that is currently in place, which is to export chilled meat. That would then protect all the economic benefits that are currently in place, and in fact would expand that economic net for South Africa by bringing the processing of the animals into South Africa with the associated job increases and benefits for the economy. That should be considered in the context that live export is in fact inherently unsustainable ecologically as well. If you consider that South Africa is a water scarce country and the production of livestock involves significant water resources, we are now exporting those natural resources in the live animals to the Middle East in a very inefficient way on a large vessel across the ocean. There are sheep processing businesses in the Northern Cape who have written to the president and the ministers complaining about how the live export industry distorts local pricing to their detriment. Animals were being transported from as far in the northwest of the country as Groblershoop, all the way across the country down to East London in order to facilitate the demand for these products to be exported to the Middle East. As a result, some of the businesses in the Northern Cape had to shutter, in other words, close down some of their processing facilities, and the claim made is 200 jobs were lost in that province alone from this practice. So there is, of course, economic benefit, as I said, and as Honorable Mtetwa did explore in his question, this is a complex, multifaceted calculation. The point, though, about live export in South Africa is that this is a new practice. Whilst we've been exporting a relatively small number of cows to Mauritius for some time, the large vessels going to the Middle East only started in 2018. And so when you introduce a large boom and bust cycle into an economy like this, it does not favor or sustain economically sustainable businesses. If you look now, there is no live export currently happening now because of the disease issues we have in this country. So where would be the small-scale farmers who were invested in their production in order to grow their livelihoods? What would their circumstances be now if they were dependent on live exports? So I think, yes, it does create shortages domestically, and then when the ships doesn't come, it creates surplus, and it puts volatility into the market, especially for lamb and mutton products, and that is not what businesses need. Businesses need price stability and certainty so that we can run businesses sustainably. I think the other point is that all businesses need to be legally compliant. There is law in place that says farmed animals may not be mistreated, and we touched on some elements of the law. The difficulty we have is that law cannot be enforced on a ship on the high seas. So once South African animals are put on a vessel and that vessel leaves South Africa's territorial waters, they are unprotected from the suffering. And the guidelines that the department prepared and the subsequent draft regulations currently in place do not provide proper mechanisms for that. So that is our concern. We're not saying that we want to see economic hardship at all. We're saying transition to the benefit of processing the animals in South Africa, keep those jobs in our territory, and explore growth in the livestock sector to the extent that that's this country's policy through the export of chilled meat. Honorable Aris made some questions about the studies, and this is our point, right? We're saying the economic evidence is not there to show that this live export is significant and sustainable. There is a study out of the University of the Free State which says this export trade has both benefits and harms, and we can forward that study to this committee if you would like to see it. It doesn't specifically deal with the question of who is benefiting and who is not. But the problem with live export is that the ship comes and it needs 70,000 animals all at one go. So it's naturally biased towards larger producers and not smaller producers. And that in itself is problematic when our stated economic policy in this country is to promote small-scale farming. We would also like to see a comparative study being done to assess the relative economic benefits of live export and chilled meat. And we argue that the minister should not be promoting this trade unless he has that data, given the inherent harms that the animals suffer and the risks it poses to South Africa's domestic economy and our reputation. The question of job losses, indeed, as raised by Honorable Davids, is a very real question, right? We don't want to see development of the agricultural sector in the Eastern Cape contingent on al-Mawashi coming from Kuwait and taking sheep. And then suddenly that ship doesn't come here. It goes to Somalia or somewhere else. And what happens to all those people who are invested in this economic value chain? It's a very asymmetrical business relationship because the exporter controls all the power. They can send their ship here or they don't have to. It's not like they're investing in a processing facility in South Africa. It's not like they're putting capital investment into our local economies. It's an extractive business, and Honorable Mtetra spoke about the question of extracting resources from Africa. That is exactly what this is. There's no foreign direct investment in this country to promote livelihoods and sustainability. This is a predatory business that comes to our economy, takes our animals from us, serves their own markets. We should remember that this is the company Al Mawashi is a Kuwaiti government-owned company. It's not even operating under the laws of general competition. So it's a real concern for us that this is not a sound economic model. As much as you as a committee are concerned, so are we concerned with sustainable agriculture. And we don't want to put animals into a volatile commercial system where one year there's a shortage and the next year there's surplus. And as we heard from small-scale farmers across the country, the problem is when there's demand for these vessels, when these vessels are in port and there's demand for these animals, the price of the animals is higher. And yes, that benefits the exporter, as Honorable Smith pointed out, but it's the detriment to the local consumer. What we want is stable prices. We don't want this type of volatility. If we look for a moment at the Australian experience, and both Honorable Smith and Honorable Trollope asked about this, and I'm sorry, perhaps to answer Honorable Trollope's question, maybe I misspoke my date. What happened there was there has been a long contestation in Australia about the legality and ethics of live export. The Australian market for sheep supply, especially in West Australia, grew way beyond what the local demand could absorb. So the country became dependent on live export. When the controversy about the mistreatment of these animals emerged back in the 1980s, the West Australian government created a select committee on animal welfare who did an objective study on whether animal welfare could be assured in this trade in 1985 already. And they found that it could not be, that welfare could not be assured because of all the reasons we heard earlier about the inherent harms that these animals suffer on these voyages. And it took from 1985 until last year for the politics of this dispute to play its way out in the Australian circumstances. There were court cases about whether this was a federal or a state level jurisdiction to decide. The exporting companies spent a fortune on promoting the trade and its benefits for Australia. But finally, the matter was settled when the Australian government took a decision that this is not in Australia's interests. And they have already significantly transitioned to a chilled meat trade. And so they transition away from the live export trade, and they have given their producers just over 3 years in order to manage that transition. As I mentioned earlier, there is no live exports to the Middle East happening at the moment because we in South Africa cannot currently manage the disease criteria that we would require to meet in order to be able to export. So if no live export ship ever came to South Africa again from the Middle East, there would be no immediate apparent harm because there is no expectation currently that that market will be supplied because we are actually practically unable to supply it at the moment. So in the future, yes, we may build a supply chain that is designed explicitly for this export. But why not build that around chilled meat? Why do we have to do that in this controversial practice of live export? I think we should also remember that the parties who are operating in this live export, there is a big asymmetry between the small-scale producers and the companies that do the export. Al Mawashi runs these ships all over the world. Some of you might remember the Al Kuwait arrived in Cape Town in February last year, carrying cattle en route from Brazil to Iraq. And there was a huge controversy because everyone in Cape Town thought there'd been a sewer spill. But actually, that ship was only halfway through its journey. And the Cape of Good Hope SPCA and the NSPCA put inspectors on that vessel. And I stand corrected on the number. They had to euthanize, I think, 17 animals right there and then because those animals were in such dire physical condition that they were suffering and irredeemably. They could not be saved. And these animals were only halfway through their voyage. And Al Mawashi brought that ship into Cape Town's harbor as if there was no problem, as if there was nothing wrong with what was happening on the voyage. So imagine for now, South Africa builds a live export industry with Al Mawashi as the partner. And if Al-Mawashi wants to source sheep or cattle from another country, they don't have to shut an abattoir in South Africa. They don't have to retrench 200 staff. They just send their ship somewhere else. And that is exactly what has already happened. When the NSPCA was in court over the lawfulness of this matter, Al-Mawashi was only getting sheep from South Africa because Australia had a summertime ban at that point because of the heat. So the ship came here, and when it didn't suit them, they sent the ship somewhere else. So this is not a sustainable, long-term, secure business model. It's a predatory model based on extracting value from our country as suits the exporter, and when it doesn't suit them, they go somewhere else. So I do agree with the caution that the committee shows and says we must understand the economics of this. Like you, we want to see sustainable animal agriculture in South Africa where animal welfare is properly assured and where small-scale farmers can access the market, and any investment they make in the businesses of their own businesses will be returned from sustainable supply. I don't think live export offers that at all. I think it offers exactly the opposite, and that is exactly the case we see now. Just as to the question that Honourable Mthethwa opened about all the stakeholders. Indeed, there are other stakeholders, and the committee should indeed talk to them. I think the red meat industry itself, and I can't speak for them, the red meat industry, though, is conflicted about this. Many suppliers in the red meat industry do not want to be associated with a trade that is inherently cruel, right? It brings disregard and consumer concern to the industry as a whole. So I think we can promote businesses in South Africa that are ecologically and environmentally sustainable, and we don't have to do that on the back of animal cruelty. Michelle spoke at the beginning briefly about the Constitutional Court and its rulings on animal cruelty. We should not forget that the Constitutional Court has linked animal cruelty to our constitutional values. They've recognized the sentience of individual animals and say the Section 24 right to a sustainable environment which is protected for the benefit of present and future generations is contingent on us linking conservation efforts and animal welfare. In other words, what the court is saying, if we are going to fulfill the constitutional mandate of a better South Africa for all, where we have dignity, freedom from violence, we respect individual rights, we cannot do that off the back of a trade that is inherently premised on violence and exploitation. So I do urge the committee, we as a group, we are happy to share with you further information and answers of these questions. I hope I have covered them all. If I haven't covered them all, Chair, you should please just direct me accordingly. But we're suggesting that this trade can be discontinued in South Africa and alternatives can be put in place where the economic benefits may even be larger than what is currently the case. They will certainly be more sustainable, and we don't have this shadow thrown over us about the mistreatment of animals. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Tony. Michelle?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Tony, for covering the questions. I think you have provided answers to all the honourable members' questions as far as I can see, the ones that I wrote down. And I sincerely thank the members for their active engagement on this topic. And I'm actually really encouraged to see that the call is for a full investigation to be done into this trade, because that really is, as Tony mentioned, is what is missing. We do not have any studies proving the economic benefits of this trade, whilst we've already covered all the inherent cruelty involved in this trade. And I do need to mention that most, if not all, of the questions posed by members relate to, understandably, the economics of the situation. But I think we also need to remind ourselves, honourable members and Chair, that the Minister's responsibility is not only to the economics of the agricultural sector, it's also to protect animals under the Animals Protection Act. And it has been proven beyond doubt that animals cannot be protected on live animal export ships. There's been other trades in the past and in South Africa and other countries that were potentially very lucrative and economically beneficial, such as the ivory trade, whale hunting, dog meat trade, and across the world, trades like child labor. But these have all been outlawed because they were deemed to be cruel and unethical. So we cannot justify continuing a trade which is known to be cruel to animals, severely cruel to animals, purely on the benefits of economics. And I wanted to add a point regarding somebody asked a question, I think it was Honourable Member Trollip, about the Australian situation. I think Tony did answer this question in terms of what led to the ban on live animal exports in Australia. Just to also mention there that the government in Australia actually provided significant support for the sheep farmers who are involved in this trade. As Tony mentioned, they've built this trade to such a significant scale that there's many, many large commercial sheep farmers that have become reliant on this trade. So they've got that is why there's a gap between the ban being enacted and the effective date of the ban being 2028, is that they're going through a 4-year transition phase in order to phase out and help those big commercial farmers transition into other markets and the chilled meat trade. As Tony mentioned, in South Africa, this trade is nowhere near the size and scale of what Australia's was. So even if we had to build such a transition plan, the likelihood is that it's not going to involve such significant investment. And, we haven't had any live export ships come here since, I think it was April last year, to the Middle East. That's all I wanted to cover. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I don't know whether you covered the part that Honourable Trollip said, given the fact that in Australia, they gave them a certain number of years in preparing for the situation where they are now, that goes to 2028, and how long would you give South Africa?
Sorry, Michelle, you go ahead if you want.
Okay, no, so I think, Chair, it would be very difficult for a group like ours to sort of lay down that sort of timeline, given that no studies have been done. We don't even know at this stage who are the exporters involved in this trade, how many of them, what is the scale of their annual exports. So I think, in order to even start thinking about, what sort of timeline should we have for a phase out, that kind of investigation needs to take place. So we can really get to grips with, who are these farmers? What is the extent of their exports? If they were to stop exporting live animals and move to a chilled meat trade, what is the timeline involved? And I think that is exactly the kind of studies and investigation and research that we need to do in order to start to think about, a timeline for phase out.
Okay.
I think the point must be made, Chair, is that at the moment, due to the disease issues, there is in fact no trade. So we're not asking for a large change that's going to force economic hardship on people. That any hardship has already manifest because export is impossible whilst we don't have full control over contagious disease in our agricultural sector. So if there ever was a time to make a decision like this, it is now. I mean, we had the same thing during COVID when these vessels were prohibited from coming here. The whole trade is essentially brittle like this. We're concerned that the minister's regulations are going to enable an expansion of this trade, which would make the ultimate closure of the trade much more problematic in our economy, right? If people are going to follow the signals the minister is sending by creating regulation and start investing in this trade, then this matter will likely be resolved through the courts, because arguably this trade does involve inherent contraventions of the Animals Protection Act and other pieces of law. And all of that volatility is not in our interests at all. We don't want to see people invest money in a trade that is economically, morally, and practically unsustainable.
Okay, thank you very much, Tony. Honorable Trolip and then Honorable Mteto.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks for the responses. I just wanted to say that I've been listening very carefully, because obviously I also have a farming background, and people that are or have been involved in farming might have different perspectives about animal welfare and how animals are treated. Some people think farmers just treat animals in the most inhumane fashion, when the exact opposite applies. If you farm livestock and you don't treat them properly, you'll go out of business. So my experience is that farmers really do treat their livestock as a critical resource in their business enterprises, and go way beyond being a business resource. It's a source of life. It's a livelihood. It's a lifestyle, and animal welfare is crucially important to farmers. So comments about the trade being extractive and a brittle industry, I would just urge that we try and avoid that kind of language, because what we're wanting to do is to sensitize people to the fact that maybe this is a practice that is going out of fashion, if I could use that word, fashion, because people are becoming more attuned to sentient beings and proper treatment of animals. I don't think it's a good idea to cast aspersions on the business model and whoever is involved, and referring to it as an asymmetrical business chain, because it gives a certain perspective that you're now opposed to a business enterprise that has been established all over the globe. But I think one of the biggest challenges, and I'd like to hear a little bit about that, is that live animals are sent to these destinations because the people who are procuring those animals prefer to slaughter in a cultural, religious, or halal systems and slaughter their own animals. I don't think animals are exported around the world because that's the most effective way to export protein or meat. It's not. It's not the most effective, efficient, or caring way of doing it. What work is being done by organizations like yourselves across the globe to sensitize those people who have that demand to self-slaughter for religious, cultural, or halal purposes the animals that they're consuming? Because you've got to do something about the demand to stop the trade. The trade doesn't happen because people choose to export live animals. There's a demand, and the demand is being filled, and obviously it comes with financial advantage as well. That's my question. Apart from petitioning us as a portfolio committee, what are your organization and other similar organizations across the world doing to deal with that matter? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trolip Mteto.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I picked up during Tony's presentation a contradiction, if it is my wrong interpretation of that. On one hand, it's like saying there is no evidence that says the shipment of live animals has a benefit here locally. And on the other hand, they are preventing it. On the other hand, they are saying, we don't know who are these people who are actually involved in the shipment of these animals. There needs to be a study. The minister cannot take a decision unless there is data. My question, where did you get your data? And what informed your data for you to then come and petition a matter that you also do feel that there is not enough data to back evidence of supporting or of not supporting? So you should be saying, let's go and do a study about this, because both parties, they look like they are short of certain information. But moving forward, it also sounds like your study is based on Australia. But what does Australia have to do with us? Because if Australia practices, Australians were not bringing animals to us, and probably our animals probably are going to where there is a demand, and your study is irrelevant to practitioners in this business to send things to where there is a demand. It's about economy, and after economy, the end user is them who know why do they want a live animal. So for somebody else, a third party, to come and thwart that business and raise issues of cruelty, yes, cruelty can be then managed or administered by the veterinary doctor. But I see this as being a sponsored campaign by a third party who is trying to stop another party from getting access to stock which they have refused them due to their own ends or due to their own reasons, which happened in another area or in another country, but they are shipping a campaign to say, go and block them. You just said this thing started in 2018. 2018 to 2025, you now have enough study to say, let's stop this practice because of reasons that are not even yet established, the extent of the same practice or of this industry. There are many things that we need to take into consideration. I was also thinking and laughing to myself that is this campaign not sponsored by the vegetarians, people who are eating vegetables, and now they are stopping those who are into meat, and now they are complaining using a decoy animal practice. Even if, yes, you have prima facie evidence, but who is sponsoring the campaign and how are they actually, why are they supporting this? I pick up there's an undertone, and I'm sure I'll pick up a lot of vegetarians stopping this, but not that I'm laughing, but I see it also already. You have a suggestion, why don't we all export chilled meat or something like that? So already there's a premeditated thinking, why don't you do this instead of doing this? So it's clear somebody is blocking somebody based on other reasons that are not ventilated here. But be that as it may, I want to link this practice with the just transition. The international community actually adopted a just transition due to environmental reasons, and they said to South Africa they must stop now mining. All of a sudden, when you check in South Africa, the trucks that are loading coal are going to the same countries that have adopted a just transition. So there is a contradiction that the just transition they were talking about is not just, because they are actually saying to South Africa, stop mining, now focus on environmentally friendly green economy, which is unsustainable as we speak. Germany and them are struggling with this green technology. Why? Because it's not working for them. You can't sustain industry or heavy industry using lightweight kind of generation of power. In the same way, I see this campaign, it has a lot of relativity to the just transition. You want to be just for animal practice, but you want to be unjust for economic reasons. And this boils down to the reality that imagine small scale farmers, they don't have land where they can keep a large stock of animals for them to ship them out. Two, the foot and mouth disease has blocked business in KwaZulu-Natal for emerging farmers, and they are complaining that there is no more business for them, there's no more market for them because the auctions are only taking from the established commercial farmers. So these are other side of the story of the same emerging farmers to say, if they are locked nationally or in the country here, if there is a market coming from outside, they will jump into that because they want to remain in business. But laws can be used to thwart business, to sabotage certain businesses, so as to let live of other businesses. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mteto. Tony and Michelle, if you can respond to the two questions before we go to the DG.
Tony, you're on mute.
Tony, don't speak to yourself. Speak to us.
Sorry, Chair, you think it's my first day on Zoom. Sorry for that. To answer Honorable Tetra's question, the question he asked about the evidence behind the proposals today can perhaps best be answered as follows, that the Minister answered a parliamentary question in this Parliament that the department did not have or had not conducted a study on the economic benefits of this trade. We have sought to source our own information in that regard, and that is why we have considered all the literature available in this study, including work done by Dr. Frikkie Marais and assistants at the University of the Free State. The Livestock Welfare Coordinating Committee has also conducted a metadata analysis of all the benefits and issues related to live export in a study that was published by Professor Eddie Webb at the University of Pretoria, and we have relied on that study and the sources of the original material that produced that study in drawing the conclusions that we present before you today. The Livestock Animal Welfare Association, also a member of the LWCC, has conducted their own study that has concluded that live export cannot be conducted in a sustainable way. Back in the period before our democratic dispensation, the Department of Agriculture sent a task team to Australia to investigate the question of live export between these two countries. I've been unable to find that research. The department doesn't hold those records, but we have certainly tried, and we have asked the Department of Agriculture, then called Land Reform and Rural Development, for all the information they have regarding the economic benefit of this trade. We've filed numerous PIA requests, both on the national government and the Department of Agriculture in the Eastern Cape for this information. So we have produced a summary to you today based on the best information available to us. And unfortunately, none of that information is coming from government sources. It's all coming from sources outside of the government. Vis-a-vis the questions about our agenda in front of you, as Michelle said, we stand before you as representatives of a broad, wide, diverse group of the public. The public has been protesting live exports since 2019. The public has produced petitions and marched on Parliament and asked Parliament to investigate this issue, and we're still waiting for a reply on those petitions. Right? The current regulations that the draft minister passed for consultation, some of those submissions were 90 pages long. They dealt with arguments related to law, animal health, economic circumstances, alternatives, the complex analysis there running literally to hundreds of pages in submission, and this is why the department is working through this. Not only were there those very detailed analyses, but there were also a wide range of analysis. Over 17,000 people commented, which is a large number for a matter like this. So I would be pleased if there was more information. I would be very pleased if the Department of Agriculture or the ministry had conducted their own studies and we were free to engage with those studies, and that would help certainly move this debate forward. But at this stage, I think we have consulted everything that is publicly available to us. The reason why we look to Australia is because we operate in a global environment, and Australia's live export trade is more sophisticated and more mature than South Africa's, and therefore we can view the context of how our trade might manifest and the legal and other practical difficulties that will arise using Australia as a proxy. Of course, it's different. That's why we also look at other countries who do live export, as we had seen in the presentation. So I hope that answers your question, Honourable Mkhetho. We stand really before you in good faith here, representing the public interest in this trade, asking that Parliament engage with it yourself, and we were free to ask us further. We can supply as much of that information as required. To Honourable Trollop's questions, yes, thank you. I take your point about using language judiciously. we are not trying to cast aspersions on the way South African farmers treat their animals. And in fact, some of the people involved in the red meat industry in South Africa have of themselves said that they are concerned about the way these animals are treated when they are out of control of the South African supply chain. And this is indeed, in fact, the real problem that we have with the industry. We may treat animals well in the domestic leg of the chain, but the moment when they're on a ship and there is no effective oversight and no effective enforcement of standards, what happens to them then? Your question about the demand for cultural and religious reasons, our organization, as the Stop Live Export Coalition, is a domestic organization. I do believe that efforts have been made to try and source some more information about what happens at the point of destination, but it's perhaps an overly ambitious request to ask us to change thousands of years of culture and economics in a country on the other side of the world. We look to our government to manage this country according to the rules and the ethics and the precepts of our democracy. It's very difficult for us to try and impose our will on another country who may exhibit different cultural preferences. Having said that, I don't believe that in the Al-Mawashi supply chain, that these animals are all being supplied for cultural or religious reasons that cannot be matched in South Africa. Al-Mawashi owns a large state-of-the-art slaughterhouse in Kuwait, and they routinely, through their media utterances, confirm that animals supplied to that country are processed through that slaughterhouse. So our question is, why could that slaughterhouse not be in South Africa and we save the animals all the apparent suffering, right? The concerns about religious slaughter at an individual animal level are real. We have exemptions in South African law that provide for people to slaughter animals based on cultural and religious reasons, but it's not an open free-for-all. There are limitations to how that is done. For example, you cannot slaughter animals outside of the regulated food chain for commercial purposes, and that is there to protect our broader interests of public health and to restrict the amount of violence that people in society are exposed to, children, for example. So we would like to argue that if those religious reasons are in fact the driving motivation, why can we not just do halal slaughter in this country and save the animals, the suffering on board? Indeed, that would be a preferable outcome, because our counterpart in trade would then invest in our domestic economy, and we would have more security in those relationships accordingly. Thank you, Chair. I hope I've answered both the questions from the honourable members satisfactorily. I've covered everything at least.
Well, thank you very much, Tony. I want to believe that, yes, you have responded to the questions. I want to request the DG and the team to have a word on the presentation before we come to the closure. DG?
Very much. To the made, we also had in with engagement. What is the department came up with regulations to get a trade that at that stage had gaps in terms of the Animal Protection Act, and it is within that context that these regulations were put out for comments. And the comments would be taken into consideration. The comment is to provide us to look at the in terms of that. It does not necessarily mean that the regulation then of the inputs that have been made be encompassing. What is it that the regulations are not equal to a ban, because what the live exports South Africa would like to have is a total ban. but we are aware that within the Wealth Organization on Animal Health, and also from the FAO point of view, there are ways and means in which you can start dealing with this regulation of exports guidelines. And those guidelines are very clear going forward, that you have got to, the animals have got sufficient food, they have got sufficient water, and other ventilation free from heat and other things that would be in the guideline. What is important is that the honorable members have heard today things to point that said, let us have all reasons that are possible for a government to take a decision that can be utilized, and that's something that we'll consider as the department moving ahead. I think it is also very important because the emphasis is on the ban, but the others that have been given, especially around the countries that moving the ban, also what would have considered for us to move ahead. I think what is very important by the presenters is the ACA for the options that are on the table, and minister would then consider those options, not open options that be with I am the person who has been that is Dr. To call upon you with into this engagement that you are having, and then and that is who will close.
Oh, your network is so bad, DG, but Dr. Madison? Dr. Madison?
Good morning, honorable members. Yes, I agree the bandwidth was bad from the DG. I'm not sure whether it's the same on my side, but
we can hear you well. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, honorable chairperson.
Please introduce yourself properly because the DG was not audible.
Oh, yes. Thanks, honorable chairperson. My name is Pani Molefe. I'm the director responsible for veterinary public health, under which the animal welfare mandate resides in the Department of Agriculture.
Okay.
So, yes, the parts that we could manage to hear from the DG side is mainly at a high level in terms of, what the department can possibly do in terms of looking at the submissions and then interrogating them and responding to that. So on my side, in terms of a technical aspect, chairperson and honorable members, I wouldn't like at this point to waste your time in terms of arguing against what the presenters have presented, because there is arguments that we can make against that. But then I think the best thing would be, I take it that the presenters have submitted, and I've seen their submission, that they've submitted to us in terms of their argument against the regulations, and those we'll consider. And what we are then working on right now is that every comment that has been submitted, we are then providing a comment thereto. Where we accept a particular comment, we are then going to then incorporate that into the regulations. And where we have a different opinion, we will provide that reason, and it's for then finally the minister to decide whether he takes that comment or not. But we promise that we are looking at every comment that we have received. And I must say that there's a number of about 17,000 that has been said, which is unfortunately not the correct number of what we have received. Mayor Michelle has indicated that they have submitted 17,000 to Dear South Africa, not to the department. To the department through the official email address that we have. We have received only 2,303, around that, in terms of comments. And maybe it's a consolidation of the 17,000 that she has referred to, but we did not receive 17,000 comments on our side. So I think that needs to be reported correctly. But yeah, in short, honorable members, I'm just assuring honorable members that we are looking at comments, and some of them, as and Garanza said, they are technical and they are long, which is taking us a bit of time in terms of looking into them. Some of them might even mean that we'll have to go back and do a little bit of scientific analysis and the like. So therefore, we cannot even promise as to when we'll be back to then present the final draft, because it's a number of comments that are highly technical, in some instances. So if I can then leave it at that level without going into the technicalities, that would be where I'll stop at this point. Thanks, Honorable Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Timolefe. DTG Sarahe, would you like to say something?
Yes,
Michelle,
honorable members.
Sorry. DTG, let me take Michelle first so that when you speak, we close on the part of the presenters. Michelle, I see you have a hand up. Is it there?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted the opportunity just to comment on or answer the issue raised by Dr. Molefe on the discrepancy between the numbers reported. We are aware of this discrepancy. In fact, I've been in communications with Kavashni Govender in your office, Dr. Molefe, last week, during which she's admitted to me that due to some reason, potentially a technical glitch between the parties, a lot of the Dear South Africa submissions did not make its way to the Department of Veterinary Primary Health email address, although I have got confirmation from the Dear South Africa platform that every single submission submitted from their platform was automatically routed directly to that veterinary primary health email address. So she has requested me to forward her a detailed list of every single submission made via those platforms, which I have done last week. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Michelle. DDG, I'm sorry for that disruption.
Thank you. Thank you very much to you, Honorable Chairperson, and good morning to honorable members and the guests of the Portfolio Committee. And I think Dr. Molefe has covered most of the part, but I just need us maybe to reiterate the work and the mandate of the department, which is that of setting law and enforcing law, and that's what this is about. And in us coming up with the law that becomes enforceable, we will be able then to address some of the issues mentioned. Dr. Molefe maybe mentioned, but maybe not in sufficient details of the process that we have embarked upon, which is the process of developing regulations. And I know the comments that are being submitted, some of them are attempting or are responding to some of the clauses in the regulations. Well, this is an open process and transparent process, which we will be concluding, and everybody, all parties, those who are for and those who are against, will be afforded sufficient opportunity to make their representation. I must also urge that we are aware of the 5 freedoms of animals that we need to, as best as possible, ensure that they are accommodated. So ours is a very delicate balance as a department. One is that, as Honorable Mteto and other honorable members, Honorable Trolip, have already mentioned, there's farming that has to happen. And at the same time, there's the welfare that has to happen. And we will try and as best as possible to balance this and make it out there And that's the process that we are embarking upon, and we're hoping for some sort of a compromise on both sides, and that is compromise really not I don't I don't want to be misinterpreted as saying we are going to compromise the welfare of animals. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying honorable members, as most of them have already alluded to, farming has to happen, and we're not taking for granted the comments made by the I think it was Mr. Gwashu and others. We're not taking those for granted, but at the same time, as government, we need to set a law and make sure that the process that eventually leads us to have law, that is South African law in terms of Animal Protection Act, becomes a process that is transparent with everybody that is affected or involved, having given a sufficient opportunity to make their inputs. And those that we are not able to accommodate will make that very clear as to reasons why. Dr. Mlefe mentions to science. Most of the comments that are made from the let me for easier English, lobby groups are noted, and they will put about the science around which this comes up, and we also are accepting that this is not going to be an easy task, but we have started the process, honorable members, honorable chair, and we ask that we be allowed to have the process unfold until sufficient engagement continues, and then there's law, South African law, with regard to export of live animals by sea. We submit, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, DDG. We appreciate the fact that you have assisted also in the responses and indicating that you already in the process of the public hearings. And to Michelle, the submissions that the number of submissions that you believe you have made, and that the group that you submitted to have assured you that they have submitted to the department. You've just heard from the department and the person responsible saying that they've only received around 2,500 or so. So you'll have to go back. It's also your responsibility to go back and check as to what has happened. However, I would like to say thank you very much to yourselves for having petitioned the portfolio committee and your willingness to come and make this presentation that is made. We acknowledge your concerns, but at the same time, we would like to assert Parliament's impartiality, the impartial oversight role that we have, and commit to hearing all affected parties, including exporters, before any conclusions are made. We will also hear from the department, as you've said, as you've heard from the DDG, Sarache, that they are engaged in that process, and once they are done, we will hear from them. As a portfolio committee, we do encourage constructive dialogue amongst all stakeholders so that Parliament may arrive at a decision that protects animals in one hand, but also support farmers and upholds South Africa's ethical and economic responsibilities. So in that, I would like to thank everyone else who has attended from our guests and your presentation, Tony and Michelle, and for having taken time to prepare your presentation when we requested that you bring a presentation to assist members. And also appreciate the department for coming to clarify the processes that you are engaged on. And thank everyone else who had joined at the platform. both here and also live. Let me thank you, honorable members, for your time in engaging with the presentation that we've had. To Michelle and Tony, I want to say thank you very much. I think if you would like to stay, you can stay. And if you would like to leave, you can leave, because we still have one item for the members that is coming. And I think it's going to be a bit shorter. Albertina, if you can bring back the agenda.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to bid you farewell. Thank you for hearing our matter today and for giving due regard to the questions we raised. We do appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Our appreciation, Tony. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members, for your active engagement. We really do appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you, Michelle. We do appreciate your time too. Have a lovely day. Okay, honourable members, the second item we have on the agenda is a briefing by Mr. Mokgohloa, a hydroponics farmer on smallholder farmers' challenges with government support and supply chain processes. We spoke to Mr. Mokgohloa at some point, and we thought maybe it would help if you were to come and present to yourselves. I think he's going to be short. He has not presented us with a presentation because his presentation is just going to be short. And I'm glad that the department is here so that they can assist us. Ntate Kobela Ote, are you here?
Yes, Chair, thank you so much.
All right. Please do make your presentation. And you have seen earlier on when we had the first presentation. So maybe members, after your presentation, they would like to ask you questions. So just be free to make a presentation and expect questions and respond to them if necessary.
Yeah, thanks so much, Chair. Good afternoon. Oh, so it's almost good day to the members. It was interesting to hear the previous presentation. It's a bit of a tough meat to swallow, but you can understand there's a lot of challenges that farmers are experiencing on the ground, and I think I appreciate the opportunity to share at least one, which is particularly this one that is quite a burning issue for someone in my position. So maybe just a brief explanation of who I am. I was born and raised in Pretoria, and I was given an opportunity to run a family-owned business that started in 1995. 17 years ago, I was given an opportunity to take over a family-owned business called Korema Farms. We're the largest cucumber growers in the country. And yeah, we obviously then approached the National Department of Agriculture. But before I say that, Chair, maybe let me also explain that I hope my presentation doesn't come across like I have sour grapes. We just recently received the information from the National Department where they have rejected our funding application. So I hope I come across as objective as possible. So the business was registered and started in 1995. 17 years ago, I joined the business, and obviously we took it from one level to the next level. Difficult for someone like myself to become a mega farmer, considering the amount of years that we've been farming and when the business started, which is what my community in Winterveld requires. So the farm is located in Winterveld, which is about 50 kilometers outside of Pretoria, further north. So we received an application from our extension officer that the application for the CASP funding is open We are quite, well, at least we're quite informed with the process of having to apply. We then took the efforts to do the application for last year, which will get funding for this year. And yeah, we were rejected. But maybe let me explain why the reason for us to come to Parliament. So if you look at how the funding model works, so we will get given a funding of 500,000, for an example, and the person who would take over the funding would be a service provider who necessarily does not know how to do their work. They just happen to be on the database of government. And they would then appoint another service provider who then obviously execute whatever request that we've done to the department. And so in essence, the funding of 500,000 does no longer become 500,000 anymore, simply because there's two people involved who have to do the process. One who's in the government a database, and the other one who actually has to do the actual work. So this obviously leads to why we see a lot of low transformation and low reform for Black farmers, despite the fact that there is funding going out to Black farmers. So in every year we obviously apply, which causes a bit of a problem. So, I mean, documents are required, and sometimes this puts a lot of pressure on a particular business like mine, that I have to stop whatever I'm doing because the submission has to happen. And so we thought of, how about we have a process where you only apply, say, once in 10 years, but the funding becomes so significant that it actually makes such a massive change that there's no need for us to go back to government with a begging bowl and ask for funding as well. And so one might say, well, you more established, why don't you go to the land bank? And the land bank has changed its mandate of how they fund someone like a hydroponics farmer like myself. And as a result, we were also rejected. So there's this missing middle that we happen to find ourselves in, where we can't get the necessary funding from the land bank, but also we can't find, or at least get given the funding from an opportunity like a CASP funding, simply because there's not enough money to actually move us from where we are now to being somewhat a industry player, or at least an industry influence in how we farm. So largely, there's not much reform and transformation happening, despite the fact that government is playing its role to make sure that farmers are funded. We just get given enough just to get by. So I don't want to come across like we don't appreciate the funding that's currently available, but it's just not enough. And given the fact that the two options that are suggested, that they're really affecting how we're supposed to be moving forward. I looked at my counterparts, who happen to be white in this case, who have been farming for much, or at least we more or less started at the same time. And they are at least 10, if not 12 steps ahead of me. And it makes it difficult when we only get given so little funding for us to catch up. And so I hope the committee can look at our questions, or at least our concern, and sort of come up with some solutions. I have a solution. I'm not sure if it's not in line with how government operates. But I mean, if we get given a wallet, for example, a digital wallet, and they allow the farmer to actually go and find the service providers, go and find whatever equipment that is required, I think that will at least give us some control of how fast and how quick we're supposed to grow our businesses. So that's largely it. I don't have a lovely presentation, like you said. It's not as long as the previous presenters, but I hope it's to the point and it's very clear.
Okay, thank you very much, Abela. We do appreciate your presentation. It is indeed short to the point and to the point. So we appreciate it. Members, I don't know whether you have comments or you have questions to Mokgohloa. I see Honorable Smith, Honorable Mthethwa. You can follow each other like that.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm going to be quick. I've got only one question in terms of this business and the farm that is operated. I just want to get clarity whether you actually have got title of the land that you are working on. Yeah, I think if I can just get that, then I might come back on a second question. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, that's the title date that you're asking for. Okay.
Good.
Okay.
Thanks, Chair, and greetings to honorable members and also our presenter now. This is a case in point of the reality of the industry, and I'm happy I'm not the one who said his counterparts are steps ahead of him, and which then makes it obvious why he is not thriving. And it's clear that government land bank is not coming to the party, changing of mandates, and it's clear that the industry is not favorable, especially the banking facilities, wherein you cannot get support. But I heard that he said they are one of the best in the country in what they are doing, but still that is not enough. So it means we have structural, systematic marginalization to practice in this industry and grow. And here's a case in point of a previously disadvantaged individual who is now also being thwarted. All I can say, we are noting this matter, and it is actually our concerns that we've been raising to say we need to come up with intervention to support our kin and kind. We are behind you, sir, and keep it up. And if there is a way that we can also support, we'll definitely reach out to you. Yes, we will engage government and industry on your challenges that you are having. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mthethwa. David?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, sir, for your presentation. My question to you is, were you previously assisted or were you never assisted by the department or by the land bank?
Okay. David, I think he did indicate that he was assisted and that he doesn't want to come across as if he's not appreciating the assistance that they have received from government. Kobela, if you can respond to the part of whether you have a title deed on your farm.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, fortunately enough, we're on a full title. The property is owned by the business. Winterveld is a very strategic land in the country that portions of it is owned by chiefs further away, but 90% of Winterveld is fully titled. So yes, I happen to be on a full title deed, and we do own the property.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Member Smith, you want to come back because you wanted to hear if he does have a title deed, and you wanted to come back. If you do want to come back, please.
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much. Well, that is encouraging because I think that's the first point that we need to start off with. I want to understand because you mentioned that you are the biggest producer of cucumbers in the country. but you are still reliant on government. What is the reason for that? And, what is it going to take for you to actually become totally independent, to operate as a independent commercial farmer, within the industry? Because I'm trying to understand where's the shortcoming, and why the necessity for government to sustain your operations. And you mentioned, like access for 10 years. So it means, expectation for the next 10 years for government basically carrying you on the one side. So I just want to understand that, because we need to get to a point where we make sure that we help people onto their feet so that they can operate independently, so that we can also assist the next person to get onto their feet.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, Honorable Smith. So maybe just to clarify that I'm the biggest black cucumber grower. There are bigger growers than me who happen to be white, but a person of color happens to be. I'm the only one in the country. You do a Google search, my name is going to come up, and I'm quite popular in the sense of growing cucumbers. So what's stopping us from weaning ourselves from government is only one thing. When we do an application to the government, it's exactly that. We write a business plan that weans us off government. We don't want to go with a begging bowl every year. We want to say we come here, please assist us with these following items, and we no longer want to come back here again because there's so many other people that government has to help. But unfortunately, we only get given a very small percentage of the actual money that we are asking for, or the actual support. And unfortunately, because we went there with a begging bowl, I can't say, well, this is too small for us to do anything. I have to take what I'm given and I have to make the best of it, which we have. But I'm saying, for us to do real transformation and for real reform, we cannot accept the very small, and I don't want to seem unappreciative, change that we get given to make a small difference. The people of where I'm coming from, they need much bigger change. And for us to do that, because I believe agriculture can do that, we can create the change that we want. We cannot allow that we should be given very bits and pieces, but yet expect for us to do a big transformation and a big change in our country. So I'm saying, perhaps maybe we need to look at the rules on how the land bank is structured for hydroponic farmers. And I mean, I would apply, because obviously, you don't want to lean on government all the time. There are other priorities. But we always find that when the mandate has changed from what it used to be, the land bank used to say, we no longer require security for you to borrow money. Now, the process has changed that you do require money. They've got a very good process where you borrow 50% of the money, it becomes a grant, and 50% becomes an actual loan. So you only have to pay back the actual loan portion. But unfortunately, for a hydroponic farmer like myself, they don't consider the infrastructure that is so expensive, that comes from abroad, as security.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Excuse me, colleagues. Thank you very much, Mr Mokgohloa. I think I must explain this situation to colleagues, and that's why I said earlier on it's going to be a very short presentation from Kobe. My office gets a number of correspondence from farmers like him, and we talk to them, and then we send to the department, we refer them to the department. So I thought from the office, when we got his and we spoke to him and we spoke to the others, we thought maybe it would help that he comes make this presentation so that other members can then understand what we meet on a daily basis in the office. And that probably the department, because it's here, the DDG is here, they would be able to to explain a bit on the issues around the funding and the example that he made on the application of the funding, and then you get the funding, and then there are other two people in between before the funds get to the farmer himself or herself. So that was the reason why we brought him. And I think when we spoke to him, it was earlier in the year. He had not yet received it. It's the first time that I hear that the application that they made has been rejected. At the time, it has not been the case. So I'll just allow DDG and your team to comment and offer advice to Kobela to what is it that they can do. And I think the question that Honorable Smith asked about the title deed was meant to say, Kobela, if you do have, is it not helping you to go to other banks and borrow money? I heard how he structured the question. And you came back and said you do want to apply, and you have wanted to apply, and you have applied at the land bank, and because there are changes that have been implemented or introduced in the land bank, you are no longer considered, and that even if they need security, they don't consider the kind of a structure of hydroponics that we have. DDG, is there anything you want to offer as an advice? Because that would say also assist us as an office to be able to assist the other farmers that we are undated with letters on a daily basis.
This will be DDG Botseleng, I presume.
Yes,
Good,
please come in.
Good morning, Honorable Chair and the rest of the Portfolio Committee members. I am Lebogang Botseleng, the Acting DDG for Food Security and Agrarian Reform in the department. I, through your permission, Chair, before I do my comments, I asked the transferring officer of the department that most of the examples that Mr Mokgohloa was making were relating to the financing facilities that we do have in the department, that May Eldam Chisa make a comment before I come in, Chair, if you allow us. Thank you.
Okay. Just before you hand over to your colleague, I think I must just clarify that you will also be expected, as I said earlier on, to just explain the use of service providers, clarify that to the farmer and ourselves as members of the portfolio committee, and just check if is it not possible, for farmers to use their own service providers, and what, if you have experiences on that, what were the experiences that would have taken you to get your own service providers assisting the farmers? So, and also maybe once you have responded to that, I would like to go back to Kobela. Please continue then, DDG.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chair. What happens around the main funding facilities that we have in the department is the CASP that Mr Mokgohloa referred to, which we as the National Department receive that funding as a grant, and we get the 9 provinces to present on the different farmer categories. But what I need to emphasize, Chair, is that we, like the colleague that I was to give to, we refer to as a delegated transferring officer by the department, would preside over the business plans that come from the 9 provinces. And we have, in the case of Mr Mokgohloa, we've made our little check with Gauteng province, because that will be the province that he would apply through. And the province is the one that would come and present his and many other farmers in the different categories, whether commercial or smallholder, that would have applied for funding. And the fund that we would have transferred to the province based on the approved business plans is entirely managed and facilitated, coordinated, Chair, by the specific province. And we must acknowledge nationally that each province would have their different way of administering this grant based on the approved business plans. One province would have what they called an implementing agent, contracted by the province, not national, because we would have sent money to the province. And by so saying, we the contracting and the arrangements between the implementing agent and the province is entirely between the province and the implementing agent. Us nationally would be to monitor and follow the money that we would have transferred to the province. And my colleague, who is the transferring officer, would even know exactly, so that we are specific with Gauteng, because Mr Mokgohloa, as a farmer, is based in Gauteng.
Yeah, I think just you'll come back to close.
Chair.
Give to your colleague. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Ma'am, Chief.
Good morning, Honorable Chair, members of the Portfolio Committee.
Good morning. Just raise your volume a bit. You seem to be far from the gadget.
Yes. Does it sound better now, Honorable Chair?
Yes, it is. It is.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, for the privilege and the honor to respond to the questions, or just to provide clarity. I think as you provided, is really merely to explain how government operates, and maybe in line with what Mr Mokgohloa has already complained about or raised as a concern, which affects the farming community. Maybe where to start, Chair, is really to respond to the question you were asking the acting DDG, to say, now that we understand the use of service providers, is there a way that we cannot trust these producers to develop their farm, as it is a means to assist them really to even learn how to get involved in the development of their farms? There is a national policy on comprehensive producer development support, Chair, which was approved by Cabinet in March 2024. It is the policy now that is guiding implementation of all funding instruments, which includes the CASP. In the policy, there are preferred implementation models, which has been outlined, because the use of a service provider or a contractor that does not know the business, that does not know the sector, has in the main in the past benefited these contractors than it has benefited the farmers. And that's where you would get even poor quality infrastructure developed. That's where you would get some of the inputs that are delivered being the incorrect inputs, because they bought in bulk. They did not consider the soil test analysis of any farm to buy the correct chemicals, and so on and so forth. So the policy is advocating the use of what we call the beneficiary holding account, wherein we had auditors evaluating and assessing the implementation of the beneficiary holding account, which currently is used in the Free State, it is used in KwaZulu-Natal, it is used in Gauteng. For the 2024-25 financial year, Gauteng started implementing the beneficiary holding account. There is a pool of farmers that are ready to be commercialized, where this mode of implementation enables them and grows them. And what we have found is that they are able to do more with the funding we give them than what we would do if we would have used a supply chain and contracted a farmer. So that is one way, but it is also a model that has not been fully accepted by all provinces. And as I said, the policy was approved last year in March. We're already enforcing its implementation throughout the country, where we really want the main benefit in terms of the support that government gives to these producers to be in the hands of the farmer more than it is in the hands of the contractor. We've received arguments in other provinces to say they have a responsibility through PFMA and supply chain to consider empowering their local SMMEs. And we have already made it a point with no ambiguity that within the agricultural sector, our SMMEs are our farmers, because they are running businesses. They need to then be receiving this resource that will go directly in food production, directly in farm infrastructure improvement, directly in training of farm workers, directly in salaries of farm workers, and so on and so forth. So there are the models that are preferred is the beneficiary holding account, where funding is put in an account where the farmer accesses it and uses it with the oversight of the department that has released it. We have the voucher system. We did implement and test the voucher system during COVID. It has its own challenges, but it is a model that we are also exploring to implement, particularly if we are to do a large scale, let's say fertilizer subsidy or a large scale diesel subsidy. A voucher system becomes more feasible because the beneficiary receives that, the beneficiary goes there, the quantity that you have approved is the quantity that he's going to get, and there would not be any direct cut on that. And of course, the other means of model of support, it includes the producer support centers. This is a means necessary where you would have communal production that is happening, and you have even subsistence households that need to produce, or you have a communal land which needs to be developed in scale, and you need infrastructure and equipment like your harvesters, your tractors. So there has to be a production center which is managed by the department, which provides that support to that communal production or farmers within a particular radius. So in that model of production, the state is the one that is responsible in executing that, because we have extension officers, we have engineers, we have all the skill employed by government that should be involved in the direct support of these communities for production. So I think when the implementation chair, and you'd then have a small amount, if at all, where a normal supply chain would be done, because even when you use supply chain for maintenance, it costs far too much than it would be when a farmer were to buy a screw or a hammer to do maintenance. So that model of supply chain, as the farmer has explained, is too expensive. It has taken a lot of funding from government that should have gone directly to the development of these assets. And we know that we have a backlog of infrastructure, we have a backlog of development of your previously disadvantaged farmers and producers who really have nowhere to go, but they're dependent on government. I hope that explains that, Chair. Then coming to the application that was done and not approved, I think we have a serious challenge, and that is why we cannot walk away from partnerships, Chair, in the funding space, because the resources that government currently have, they far are not enough. The demand far exceeds these resources that we currently have. If you look at the profile that was shared with us that Koroma has given, he has already alluded to the fact that he has received CASP funding in the past. He's having over 30 tunnels on his farm. He's producing. CASP has developed him to a level where he has passed the break-even point. So you exit a CASP grant once you break even, and then CASP is able to attend to the other farmers who had never been supported in the past, who are also waiting to be supported. But now the point is raising of then the missing middle is that once he has been adequately supported through your CASP grant, where does he go to? Hence, it became important for us to introduce a blended finance scheme, because in as much as it introduces them to the debt, you do recognize that there is a shortfall on their end, which would be a collateral that a financing institution would be looking at, would be the high risk, because it is not known, that the financing institution would be looking at, meaning that they will not necessarily fund him if nobody shared that risk with them. So they need to fall into a blended finance pad, which then develops them until they reach a turnover of above 10 million, 20 million per annum, and they are self-reliant. Or they reach a turnover where the business is self-sustainable, that it can either refinance or there is an ongoing production facility because the relationship with the bank already exists. So in that instance, there is a need for the department to realize that you cannot be satisfied with blended finance only now being accessed through APSA, through IDC, and through Land Bank. We are having all other funding institutions. We have the African Development Bank that has shown interest. We have Standard Bank, Nedbank, FNB, all of them have engaged with the department. They are ready, but we cannot bring them on board to broaden access to blended finance because we don't necessarily have enough grant funding to blend with them. So as we move and the fiscal position of the country improves, it becomes important to advocate for broadening of access to blended finance, because we are able to pick up producers like your Mr Mokgohloa, who would not necessarily be approved from CASP because CASP has done its work in developing them. They need to fly, but there's no instrument currently that enables them to fly. And blended finance is that instrument. So the state has done its work in identifying that gap, building instruments to close that gap. It is now our responsibility to scale it up and make sure that as many farmers who need that support are able to get it. The backlog in funding, and that is why for as long as we remain a developmental state, Chair, we may sound arrogant, but it is just the truth. You would not do away with a CASP funding or a grant funding to the agricultural sector, because it addresses our problem of food insecurity. It addresses our problem of backlog in infrastructure. We know our history. We know the state of our communal spaces where arable land exists, but the infrastructure would need hundreds of millions, even to an extent where you just need to move water from a river to that arable land and turn it into production. So a grant funding for the development until such time that we have truly transformed the sector and increased the productive volume coming from the Black producers as competitive or as parallel to what currently exists as productive volume coming from the previously advantaged producers. And we are also advocating that we are a global village. Ours is not a competition amongst ourselves. We have a responsibility, all of us, to develop your farmers like Mr Mokgohloa, so that they too can participate in the export of cucumber, even if he is part of the exporter that feeds Lesotho or Swaziland. But we have a responsibility to feed Africa and to feed the world. And for that, we would really need to make sure that even the funding resources that we have, they go directly to the farmers and the farmers use them. Our auditors, Chair, when they were auditing the beneficial holding account, because there had been sentiments that said, when you give these farmers money, they first go and buy a Mercedes-Benz. One of the things that they found actually on the farm is that farmers now, they realize that the future billionaires of Africa are coming from agriculture. They have bigger responsibilities to feed their farmers, their families, to create employment. But they do realize that if they mess up this funding that they received from government, they would not be anywhere to fall on because they would be blacklisted by the department. So their businesses or their farms would literally die. But more importantly was that we have already an agreement. The department in the province will sign an agreement with the farmer. There are controls and there are punitive clauses in that agreement. He himself would be, at least you have one person that you can go to and recover the resources of the state immediately without going through too many processes and commissions, and immediately you are able to recover the state resources if they are being misused. So it really is a powerful model that we really want to advocate and get ownership by all provinces to move away from this dependency on supply chain and use of contracting to support our farmers, because that support in itself has challenges. We know it. It is not something that we do not know. I think, Chair, my response are broad because the questions were broad, but just to say that we share the same sentiments as our farmers. We have the same goals and dreams which are developmental in nature. We have already passed a policy which then governs and tries to guide the funding space and how each and every province should behave, albeit that they are the implementers, we are just the funders. So anyone who do not comply to the policy, the department nationally has an oversight responsibility through the Division of Revenue Act. We do have powers to even withdraw or stop any allocation where it is misused. So the details around the why Dr. Mokgohloa was not approved by Land Bank, if they have explained, and it is one of the things that are not part of their norms and standards, or they need still to improve that, because Land Bank did lose a lot of skill during the liquidity challenges, which they are beginning to build back. I don't think it's going to be a problem that will continue into the future, Chair, that there would be other production systems that would not be supported by them. But in the interim, if he is in need of funding, he can explore going to APSA, because their turnaround is also very quick. They are more interested in proven black farmers. They are a little bit scared. We are trying to get them to have an appeal on startups, because our blended finance concept focuses or includes also support for startups. But with a farmer of his nature, with the history that he has, it should not be a problem unless there are other reasons why his funding will not be approved, because the financing institutions are also guided by the laws of South Africa. Chair, I would want to stop there and we can come in if there is anything required from our end. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Elder. I was going to ask you a question as to whether after he has been rejected, have you been able to talk to him and explain, you know, what are the reasons and what are the chances for him to improve? What is the situation that could help him to improve his chances? of getting funding, you know, after rejection. And I think you just spoke to it now. Now, the issue of the service providers, now that you know, and I think I want to remind members here, you know, we just came from the oversight visit in the Eastern Cape, and we went to visit farmers, the citrus growers and macadamia and all that. And we came to a farm called Necha, where we found that there's a system where you have a middleman and service providers there, you know, participating in farms to an extent that it doesn't benefit the farmer at all, but it benefits the middleman or middlewoman, if I were to say so. So you know this situation, and I think DG Wabek, it's something that needs to be looked at. It's not palatable. It's not helping farmers. But Elder, you also spoke to what you call production support center. And my question to you is, and maybe to your colleagues, is it that not the same as the same thing as the FPSU? And because if it's the same, then Elder, it's not a vehicle that can help farmers, because from what we have seen on FPSUs, there is a serious problem that we still have to discuss with the DG and the minister. So if indeed you are referring to something that is like the farmer production support unit, then that's not helpful. The other thing then, from the DG to DGs and everyone from the department, you know, the difficult and the painful thing for me is that, and I don't know about other members here, is that all the black farmers we interacted with have been rejected by Land Bank for blended finance. So who are they really assisting? I mean, Elder, you remember that not only from the other provinces that we visited, I think we were with you in the Northwest. So I am not very sure as to why do we still have the very same people that we have promised ourselves to improve, so that they come to a level where they are commercial farmers. I mean, Mr Mokgohloa says, you know, honorable members, is that since I started taking over, when I look at my colleagues, my other colleagues, they are 10 or 12 steps ahead from me. So that would then tell you that we have not done enough to be able to assist the black farmers or the small-scale farmers to grow into a point where they can be called commercial farmers. So the last part that I think the department must respond to is this issue about the Land Bank addressing its self-imposed liquidity challenges. So, and it can't address these issues with agricultural funds that are meant for farmers. They have to do what they are meant to be doing to assist farmers. And the farmer speaks about the missing middle, and you try to address it, Elder, and even refer him to ABSA. And I wish you could assist all of them and most of them that come to you who have a problem of such a scale or the same problem with Mr Mokgohloa, because I thought we will make just a bit of an example with bringing him and test your systems in the department, DG and DDGs, as to how are you assisting them. And we all agree, and yourselves, you admit that indeed there is that missing middle, because he has to move away from the grant. He is willing to do so, and so maybe what you need to do is to try and come through and come closer to such farmers to assist them. I don't know whether I should go back to you, Elder. You want to respond, or go back to your DDG? You'll decide, the both of you, before we go to the high level, if the DG is available. I see that he has a responsibility, someone.
Elder may continue, Honorable Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, DDG. Elder, just continue then.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I'm not sure if you went to Neham Academia, Chair.
Yes, we did.
Academia is a business and community-owned enterprise. So the difficulty there is the community agreed with these business developers to join hands, and they created a company together, which then developed the Neham Academia. The business support comes from the private partner, and the skill transfers in terms of fund management, blah, blah, blah. They went and empowered the members of the community, and the relationship is really just that. When we step in supporting something like that, we always look at the interest of the community to ensure that the value that is accrued to them is justifiable, the value that the business partner takes is reasonable and is fair and has been compensated accordingly. So you don't come in and give yourself 40% when you have not contributed the 40% of equity, because you wouldn't do that in any other business anyway. So we would come in and assess on the business model and look at it from the interest of the community, because as government, we need to protect the weak. So I'm not sure what the issues are. Yes, Chair?
Elder, let me help you and say that don't worry about Ngeha, because there's nothing there, Elder. There's nothing there. The farm has not been working. That company has been closed last year, July. So there's nothing at all. So it's something that I'm saying we have to come back to the DG and the minister at some point. So you don't have to worry to respond about that. I was just making an example of situations like that. So there's nothing. We already have a report, and we will engage with the department. So you can try and just assist on the others that I've raised. But the other thing is that the DG is back, and the DG says he has had an opportunity to meet with Mr Mokgohloa at a recent event about financing, and that Mr Mokgohloa, in their discussions, he must have now applied for the Agri-B fund. So all I want you to respond to is these issues that you are raising, is to not necessarily referring to Mr Mokgohloa. He is but one an example. So generally, now that your responsibility is to monitor and evaluate the funding that you send to the provinces, why are you still allowing them to continue with the what do you call it, using the process of funding farmers in the manner in which they are doing, where they have middlemen and middlewomen there instead of sending it straight to the farmer who needs it. My take is that Mr. Mokgohloa says this thing, and I'm thinking that, and I may be wrong, but I'm thinking that if he had been given the grant money in the beginning and directly to him, because he is a sustainable and sustained farmer, he knows what he's doing. He could have done better with all the money that went to the middlemen somewhere there. If I may use the example that he has made, that for an example, if you were given 500,000, that 500,000 does not come to you as a farmer at some point, and I don't know, he may end up with 200,000 because the 300 would have gone to the middleman. And the examples that you just yourself made, Elder, that, you know, for an example, I mean, why would you need a middleman to go and buy a hammer? So I just wanted to respond to these issues that are general, and that the money that goes to from the department to the provinces, you have a responsibility to monitor on how they use it. You can come in, Elder.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Chair. As I said, we are enforcing the implementation of the policy. The policy is not completely saying that the supply chain model should not be used, but they are preferred models. So to try and understand where we need to use our enforcement force, because everybody must migrate in ensuring that there's a mix of approaches to enable the development of these farmers. I will give you a quick, we did the audit to get a baseline in terms of the implementation controls as well as the financial controls of all provinces, Chair. So we would take 2 provinces per year with our internal auditors and went across the country to do that. We have a report to that effect, which then is able to indicate, and what we instructed our internal auditors was where the supply chain processes have huge control deficiencies, then they must also be clear on the recommendations to assist us to enforce the policy. So they came back for Northwest. They said, stop supply chain model with immediate effect. We said, okay, it can be with immediate effect, but we need to work with Northwest to stop the supply chain model. And the report is there to show what the issues were. They audited the Western Cape. The Western Cape audit came green, indicating that the implementation model is, the farmers are happy with it, where they are using a public entity of the state to then assist farmers in developing their farms. They are implementing through CASIDRA and HODGO. They are having community approach. They have community council, community committees who do thorough business assessment, thorough business farm plans, and then thorough business development as commodities, which then assist their respective commodity clients who are beneficiaries of CASP. So they have done Western Cape. The audit in Western Cape came clean. The Northern Cape, they did an audit there in the Northern Cape. The Northern Cape is implementing a dual approach, which is your beneficiary holding account and some sort of a supply chain where the state will still procure the services for your subsistence farmers. Mpumalanga, they did an audit. Mpumalanga is using your supply chain model, but the audit of Mpumalanga in terms of controls, in terms of financial controls, and the feedback from farmers, they were happy with it. So we had a green audit from Mpumalanga, meaning that we would be saying with the current management in Mpumalanga, there seemed to be satisfaction between the farmers as well as the auditors in terms of controls that are in place both financially and implementation. Limpopo is using supply chain, but their report came not very good. We have indicated we're already in discussions with Limpopo. It has a new HOD to explain and ask them to explore, do tours and see how Free State is implementing, how Western Cape is implementing, so that you can start introducing different implementation model as a province. KZN is using the 3 models of support. They are using a beneficial holding account. They are supporting through their agriculture development agency, and to a lesser extent using supply chain for subsistence producers, apparently, particularly where they do mechanization support. Gauteng, we have managed to get them to migrate to a beneficial holding account for the qualifying farmers, and to some extent for your subsistence, they are still using supply chain. We are strongly in discussions with Gauteng, because even with their supply chain, the internal audit report came very red. So we are not really happy. So discussions between ourselves and Gauteng are ongoing, Chair. Free State has just received a new HOD. When he was introduced last year, they were already struggling with implementation. And the minute we had a meeting with him and the MEC, they went immediately, got their legal teams, got agreements with all farmers who were approved, who qualify. With their intervention in December, stepping in, by end of the financial year, they managed to have an expenditure of at least 95%, where the funds were sitting in the beneficial holding account. Meaning that they came in late, they did not lose the funding, and the farmers then had the time to prepare their soils and have time to do the winter crops, those who did the winter crops and those who were doing the summer crops. So for the 25-26, you were having farmers and group of farmers supported from the 24-25 budget, as well as the 25-26 budget. What that does, we have received the reports in terms of what we call ongoing projects, which are concluded and which would now be concluded by end of November. That is now the funding of the previous financial year, which we could not lose, which is demonstrating also the power of the beneficial holding account. So with the new HOD on board, his appointment is just done now towards the end of this financial year. I mean, now during the month, I think he was appointed in October or so. Free State is actually going to continue with that model, and we are happy with that. Eastern Cape, Chair, we are in engagement with them there, and we need to clean up in the minds of Eastern Cape leadership the notion that it is a poor province communal, because in that space you still have good farmers who have and has the knowledge on how to control, but the model itself is still powerful. So we are working with the province also to get them to come on board. So as I said, the implementation and enforcement of the implementation of the policy is something that we have done. We started first saying, let us approach it objectively, not emotional. We did audit of all provinces. That becomes a baseline. Where we need to go back now is to do a follow-up audit with Northwest to all the provinces that were red. We want to go back and see if when they improved the control deficiencies that were lifted up in our audit reports, would they have bettered their chosen implementation model? If not, then it becomes an instruction, Chair, from national to say, unless you implement this, because we have those powers given to us by the Division of Revenue Act. So we would be saying, unless you do this, then we are going to withhold the funds from your province, because it would all be done in the interest of ensuring that the farmers are developed properly and the resources do what they are intended to do. I hope that explains it, Chair, that we are taking it systematically, objectively, so that we don't also rattle and create more problems as they migrate to an approach they may not necessarily be familiar with.
Yeah, thank you very much, Elder. DDG? Lebu, you want to come back?
Thank you very much, Chair. I would not really want to repeat what Mayor Elder has said, except to commit to you that the concerns raised around our reinforcement in the provinces, we should strengthen it. We commit that we will continue, like Mayor Elder has been painting the picture of how we approach these provinces to reinforce our producer support policy. That's all, Chair. I would not want to repeat what has been said. Thank you.
Thank you very much. DG, I have noted that you are in an area which has network volatility. If you could say something before we close, if it's
Can you hear me,
possible.
Chair?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, thank you very much, Chair. I think the colleagues have responded in terms of the policy provisions that are there and the work that we are doing. I think it is very important that we also take into consideration the issues that Ntate Kobela has raised, especially in and around how the funding goes to the farmers per se on the ground, and how there's a lot of leakage in terms of what they receive and what the government would have given. But at the same time, Chair, we shouldn't fall foul and follow the very same example that we are all trying to deal with when we had the earlier challenges with recap. So that balance in terms of the policy provisions from earlier this year would assist us to move in that space safely. I think one of the areas that is very important, maybe even for Ntate Mokgohloa, is the recognition that the government has got multiple funding programs that are on the table. And he's quite, and other farmers, because this matter is even broader than Ntate Mokgohloa per se, is that when there are challenges in one area, there's always an avenue in terms of engaging with government officials to see what is possible in his particular space when he reaches almost a dead end to deal with the issues. There are various matters that we have dealt with where farmers would not necessarily be able to then meet certain criteria, where there are engagements with various funding bodies to see how do we bridge that. And for that matter, it's always advisable, Chair, that we have got engagements with the farmers from a government perspective. We will really welcome, Chair, the engagements on the FPS use and maybe the agri-parks, the conceptualization in general, because as we had indicated, there are various problems that we are dealing with at that particular level. On the issues raised around how we assist the farmers where there are challenges, especially pending from what Chair was highlighting from the Eastern Cape being an example. I think Mayor Mchiza has covered that aspect, but we would really like to have that engagement, Chair, at your convenient time so that we can have a clear view in terms of where we are going, in terms of project management and how this has got to be managed in the context of the South African Constitution, especially Schedule 4, when it comes to agriculture. I would not want to also go quite a lot of the issues that are there, but I would appreciate Ntate Mokgohloa. And the last time around, he made presentations, and those are the things that we are currently looking at as a department during our discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, DG. And your team. We do appreciate that you came and joined us. And I was expecting indeed that the example of Ntate Mokgohloa would then help us to look at the situation of all other farmers that are in the same space as him. And that it's not about him, but about all the other farmers. he has been willing to make this presentation so that you have an understanding of where they stand, and he also makes provision of proposals of what he thinks could help. And I think Ntate Mokgohloa, you listened carefully on the presentations the responses by the departmental officials from the DG himself and the DDGs. So just before I close, Ntate Kobela, can I give you an opportunity, the last one, to close before we close the meeting?
Thank you, Chair. I think the DFIs were put in place for exactly that, to develop farmers like myself to get to a point where we no longer need government funding. So when Mayor Elder raises an issue of having to go to APSA, I think Land Bank is the mother body of, or at least in my view, on how they get their money. So APSA gets their money from Land Bank, and they basically implement pretty much almost the same mandate. The Land Bank, it's not an issue of, I think, response. I think it's an issue of access. My issue is that even today, we are yet to find someone who's an industry leader, who has really set the mark for Black farmers to follow suit. I think 30 years later, if a business who's 30 years old still struggles to be that sort of a person, for me, I really think we're not addressing the core of the issue. Ndate Ramaswamy raises an issue of Agri-BEE. Agri-BEE is a fantastic fund. The only issue is that it needs own contribution, which the Land Bank is supposed to play a part of, but they don't. So I don't understand why we move away from institutions that are meant to help Black people, and we go to institutions that were previously helping white farmers. And so I don't know where Black farmers run to in this instance. I think I'm particularly not happy with how things are run at the moment. So, but I understand, Chair, that my initial response to this was just to address some of the challenges that we have from a funding point of view. And from what I hear in the discussions, we have brought it to the table, and further investigations will happen, and hopefully one day we'll get a solution.
Well, thank you very much, Ntate Mokgohloa. Exactly that. That we ended with, that the issues have been put on the table, and my understanding from the DG when he was closing here was that he has had the presentation that we've made, and the comments from the honorable members, and that at some point at the time that is available to the portfolio committee as a department, they would come back and make a presentation. But when Elder spoke, you also heard that there is work that they are doing also from provinces and the like. So in relation to responding to the issues that you raised on how funding is actually afforded to the farmers, and which is something that you have raised. So we want to appreciate your time and just taking time to come and represent everyone else, and not only yourself, because I hear that your concern is about assisting other farmers that are in the same situation that you find yourself. And indeed, we all are here because we believe that with all our inputs and the work that the effort that we put into this work, that we all have a responsibility to do. At the end of the day, we will be able to assist farmers that needs the support of the department. Honorable members, I want to believe that we have come to the end, unless there is anything really urgent. But I've realized that there is no hand up. So thank you very much to all of you, honorable members, Ntate Mokgohloa, and the department led by the DG. We will meet next time when we invite you to come to the meeting. Mr Mokgohloa, we hope to meet you next time, having been assisted and doing very well. We hope that one day we'll be able to reach and visit your farm to see how you're doing. Thank you very much, colleagues. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Recording stopped.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Appreciation. Nhlanhla, may I request that you release everyone else except for Noguzola and Albertina. I can't see Albertina.
Okay, Chair.
Just leave your team and release everyone else. I think there's still Landela and member Aris and member